be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 8th part of What If Aizen Finds BEN10 in Bleach Verse. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Bigby the Big Bad Wolf on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Ultimate human Gausaur, he roared. Ultimate? Enoitra exclaimed before Ultimate human Gausaur rammed him. Your aliens have second forms? Lilinet shouted, she and Harible's Fraxian staring at Ben's new form. Yeah, Ultimate human Gausaur grunted as he glared at Enoitra. Wanted it to be a surprise. Enoitra laughed as he picked himself up. At first it started as a low chuckle before it became downright maniacal. Ben, you BSTRD, you've been holding back this entire time, Ultimate aliens. Ha! Now this really got interesting. Ultimate human Gausaur punched his palm. Let me show you just how interesting I am. The combatants charged at each other. Enoitra raised all of his scythes excitedly, a look of madness and delight upon his face. He swung one of them at Ultimate human Gausaur, the blade coming in contact with his opponent's shell. Much to his shock, the scythe scraped along the surface of the shell, but didn't do any visible damage. Ultimate human Gausaur smirked. Guess you're not the only one with a tough body. He spun around and slammed his mace tail into Enoitra's side, knocking the Arankar back. Enoitra just raised his scythes again and prepared to strike. I'll slice you up, he vowed. There's no way you can dodge all of these. So I won't, Ultimate human Gausaur replied before aiming his arms at Enoitra. Much to the shock of all the Arankar, his hands twisted into what appeared to be 4-barreled cannons with a black outline and circle in the center. A moment later, Ultimate human Gausaur began firing missiles from his cannon hands. One exploded in Enoitra's chest, actually causing the Arankar to cry out in pain as he was thrown back by the blast. Ultimate human Gausaur slowly walked towards him, continuously blasting Enoitra with his missiles. The girls watched in awe and satisfaction as every time Enoitra tried to get back up, he was hit by another one of Ultimate human Gausaur's missiles. It was an onslaught and Ultimate human Gausaur did not look like he was going to let up for a moment. Tessera saw this and the grip on his sword tightened. He wanted to go and help his leader, but he was fairly certain he did not stand a chance against this monstrosity that was BEN10. Enough, Enoitra thundered, slashing through the missiles. He stuck out his tongue and fired a Siro. Ultimate human Gausaur couldn't get out of the way in time. Any warning the girls were about to give him died on their lips as he was swallowed up by the Siro. Enoitra smiled, thinking he had finally defeated Ben, only to gape when the attack faded and Ultimate human Gausaur stood completely unharmed. Nice try, Ultimate human Gausaur grunted at Enoitra's dumbfounded expression. Enoitra stared down at his feet as if trying to wrap his head around what was happening before him. You think that just because you used a new form, he muttered, his hands trembling so bad that his scythe shook. He raised his head back up. That you're gonna beat me. Ultimate human Gausaur narrowed his eyes for a moment before doing something that took everyone by surprise. He started laughing. What's so funny? Enoitra yelled. Ultimate human Gausaur turned his hands back to normal as he clutched his chest, his laughter bellowing. Answer me, damn it, Ultimate human Gausaur hunched over, still laughing. What is so funny? The evolved alien straightened himself before pretending to wipe away a tear. Enoitra, I think I just figured you out. Enoitra narrowed his eye. And what does that mean? You talk about how great you are, but then you get mad when somebody turns out to be better than you. You might be the 5th Espada, but you're also a hypocrite and a sore loser. Ultimate human Gausaur pointed an accusing finger at him. Enoitra stared at him, frozen by his words. Man, I actually feel sorry for you. Enoitra's entire body was shaking at Ultimate human Gausaur's words. Don't you dare pity me, BEN10. Feel sorry for someone else. Hero, I'll show you. I am the strongest. Stronger than anyone else. He dashed forward. I'll cut down anyone who stands in my way, including you. Ultimate Human Gaussor sighed as the distance between them got shorter. No. He turned his right hand back into a missile launcher. You're not. He fired a missile straight at Enoitra's face. The fifth Espada howled as the explosion actually burned his skin. He had done it. That human had managed to overpower his hero. Enoitra was too shocked over this revelation that he did nothing to stop Ultimate Human Gaussor from tackling him back onto the ground. Ha, Ultimate Human Gaussor said. Guess I really did need to just keep hitting harder. Speaking of which, he turned his cannon back into an arm before punching Enoitra in the face, the blow creating a powerful shockwave. He did it again and again and again. Each time his fist connected with Enoitra, another shockwave burst out. It took everything the spectators had not to get thrown back. Ultimate Human Gaussor brought his hands together, pulled them up over his head, and brought them smashing down on Enoitra, the resulting shockwave finally knocking everyone else off their feet and sprawling across the sand. Ultimate Human Gaussor looked down at his opponent. Beaten, battered, and possibly broken, Ultimate Human Gaussor was satisfied that his work was done. In a flash of light, he turned back into Human Gaussor. And then, in a second flash, he turned back into his human form, an intense gaze focused on his defeated opponent. It's over, Enoitra, Ben said with a coldness that made the girls stare at him. Tessera glared at Ben, readying his sword to avenge his fallen MSTR. But he froze when he felt that he was being watched. He noticed Lillianette, Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun all had eyes on him, their weapons drawn to attack despite their injured conditions. Don't even think about it, Lillianette threatened him. Ben turned around and ran to the other's side. Come on, let's get you girls to the infirmary. Ben, Apache looked back and forth between him and Enoitra. That was incredible. Now it all makes sense, Mila Rose muttered in thought. Why the Ultimatrix made Albedo more powerful than you. Sung Sun frowned at him. How long were you going to keep that a secret from us? Ben scratched the back of his head. Well, I was. You still don't fully trust us, Lillianette realized, hurt by this discovery. Ben lowered his head. Look, girls, where do you think you're going, hero? Ben turned around to see Enoitra weakly sitting up. The fifth Espada breathed heavily. Get back here, this fight's not over. Lord Enoitra, Tessera sighed in relief. Stay down, Enoitra, Ben warned him, though he reached for the Ultimatrix just in case. Didn't I tell you not to pity me? Enoitra wobbly got to his feet. I can still fight. Go on, turn into whatever alien you want. Fourarms, Swampfire, Diamond Head, Human Gaussor. Go into your ultimate forms if you want to, it doesn't matter. I'll take them all on. Ben's hand hovered over the Ultimatrix dial, ready to go alien if need be. Enoitra picked up his size. Come on, hero, transform already. Ben's hand twitched, but he still didn't move. What's wrong? Fight me. Just leave, Enoitra, Ben said firmly. No, Enoitra raised, readying his blades. How many times do I have to tell you not to pity me? He ran forward, lifting up his scythes to cut Ben down. Ben's hand touched the Ultimatrix dial. But just as Ben was about to pick which alien to turn into, Enoitra was slashed across the chest, BLD spewing from his newest wound. Enoitra stared in shock at the sudden attack before falling to his knees. What? Ben gave you the chance to walk away. But I will not be so merciful to you. HAREM stood between Ben and Enoitra, her sword drawn. A trickle of BLD dripped from the tip of her blade. Lady HAREM, Apache cried out in shock and relief. HAREM, Enoitra coughed, glaring at her. Your bloodlust knows no bounds, Enoitra, HAREM said coldly. I already warned you once never to harm my Frexione, and it was foolish to try and attack Stax as well. I should have known not to expect better from the likes of you. Shut up, Enoitra yelled. Of course people get hurt in battle. It's their fault for not staying out of the way. HAREM's eyes narrowed in disgust. What's with that look? Enoitra mocked her. If you have a problem, then how about you fight me, HAREM? It wouldn't be much of a fight, HAREM said dismissively, which further enraged Enoitra. All of you, looking down on me, Enoitra rose up to attack her. I am the FCK's strongest. I'll kill every single one of you for looking down on M. His rant was cut short as HAREM slashed him again, causing him to collapse from his latest injury. "I won't kill you," HAREM said, turning her back to him. "Only because I do not wish to inconvenience Lord Aizen with another opening in the espada at the moment. But be warned, OMNITRIX." She looked over her shoulder at him. "I will not warn you a third time." "Lord OMNITRIX," Tessera ran to his side. HAREM ignored him, instead walking over to Ben and the rest of the girls. "Let us get you healed," she told them gently. Her Frexine nodded. "Yes, Lady HAREM," they said together. "So, Luppy decided to attack Ben after his training with Tozen?" HAREM asked as the girls relayed what had happened. "That's right, Lady HAREM," Apache told her. "He probably did it as a way of rubbing his superiority in Grimjow's face." "Luppy was fond of showing off his rank," HAREM noted. "Ben was incredible," Lillian said, throwing her arms around for emphasis. "First he turned into this guy called NRG who wears a big oven suit." She looked over at Ben. "Hey, is he really living radiation?" "Radiation?" HAREM asked. "Yeah," Ben said. "NRG species are beings made of radioactive energy. That's why he has that big suit, so it doesn't affect other people." Ben paused. Can a Rancor be affected by radiation?" "I don't know," HAREM admitted. "It's possible, but since there is no radiation in Hukomundo, I couldn't tell." "Good point," Ben said. "Luppy thought he'd won when he went up into the air," Lillian continued. "So Ben turned into this electric flying jellyfish called Amphibian. He managed to save Apache and the others, knocked Luppy into the pool, and then shocked him real good." Miller Rose scowled. "Still hate how Luppy got the drop on us like that." "Despite his behavior, he is still an espada," HAREM said. "You should not have underestimated him." "Yes, Lady HAREM," Sung Sun said while Apache and Miller Rose both looked to the side. "Still, it's impressive that you were able to defeat Luppy, Ben," HAREM complimented him. Ben shrugged. "The guy was tough, but he was definitely no Grimjow." "He only became an espada because one of them got demoted," Apache stated. "I bet Yami, Araniro, Shale, or Zamari could easily beat him." HAREM crossed her arms but said nothing further about Luppy. Instead, she brought up a far more serious topic. "After you defeated Luppy, OMNITRIX attacked you." "That's right," Ben said, putting his hands in his pockets. "Apparently he was tired of other Arankar trying to fight me first, so he decided to try and take me down before they did." "First he turned into Chromastone," Lillian said. She laughed. "You should have seen the look on OMNITRIX's face when Chromastone absorbed his Zero and shot the blast right back at him." "We tried to help against OMNITRIX," Sung Sun added. "But we could do very little against him. We were actually about to release when Tessera caught us by surprise." "I'm surprised that OMNITRIX allowed his Fraxian to aid him in battle," HAREM said. "He didn't," Apache said. "After that cheap shot, OMNITRIX chewed him out for helping. Said he didn't need it against the likes of us." "Ben then turned into this big guy called Human Galsor," Lillian continued. "And that guy was at least as big as Yami. Then he made himself even bigger and stomped on OMNITRIX." "But it wasn't enough," Miller Rose added. "We still tried to help, but then OMNITRIX wounded all three of us. Ben wanted us out of the way even though we could have used our release states to heal ourselves and stay in the fight." "He was merely concerned about your well-being," HAREM said, "not insulting your capabilities." "Course OMNITRIX wasn't going to let that happen," Lillian said in annoyance. "So he used his release state. Ben tried fighting him, but OMNITRIX wasn't going down. He landed a hit on Ben and looked like he was about to finish him off. So I said he didn't have the ball to fight without using cheap tricks." "Did you now?" HAREM asked, and there was a hint of amusement in her voice. "All you did was PSS him off and make him try to attack you," Apache pointed out. "I didn't care," Lillian admitted. "He was going to hurt Ben and I wasn't going to let that happen. Besides, Ben went ultimate and kicked his butt, so it doesn't matter." Then her eye widened before she frowned, registering her own words. HAREM faltered when she heard that. "Ultimate?" Ben flinched. "Yes, Lady HAREM," Sung Sun said. "Apparently the Ultimatrix can do more than turn Ben into different aliens. It even allows them to transform a second time, becoming more powerful versions of themselves with additional abilities. Ben referred to his transformation at the time as Ultimate Human Gausor, so I am guessing that Ultimate is used in the names for all of these secondary transformations. I see, Harable looked at Ben out of the corner of her eye. That would explain quite a few things regarding your story about the Ultimatrix. Though, I do not find you at fault for keeping this ability to yourself. Everyone stared at her. Doing so was a wise decision. But it means he doesn't really trust us, Lillianette argued, the hurt having returned to her voice. Have we done anything to fully earn it? Harable pointed out, and Lillianette froze. She tried to think of a response, but none came to mind, so she settled for slouching over in defeat. It's only natural, given his circumstances. The rest of the walk to the infirmary was in stunned silence, with Harable having given the girls something to think over and Ben being surprised that she actually took his side. As Apache, Mealer rose, and Sung Sun had their injuries looked over, Harable was accompanying Ben and Lillianette back to Starrick's chambers. Word of your ultimate forms will spread, Harable cautioned Ben. You'd best prepare for the fallout. You think Aizen will be mad that I kept it a secret? Ben asked, silently adding to himself that Aizen probably knew by now, especially if the fake sky was a surveillance system. He will no doubt understand, Harable reassured. For the exact same reasons I do. So you're really not mad at me for keeping this a secret from you? Ben couldn't help but ask. If I was in a situation like yours, I would no doubt do something similar, Harable said. Until the time came for me to fight. Unfortunately, Lillianette was not as dissuaded. Was that it, Ben? Were you keeping your ultimate alien forms a secret in case you had to fight us? You can't blame him, Harable told her kindly but firmly. Look at everything that has happened to him since he was first sent to our universe. Lillianette was once again at a loss for words, and that made her mad. Ben reached out a hand to her, in hopes of cheering her up, only for Lillianette to smack it away. I thought we were your friends. Before Ben could say anything to defend himself, Lillianette ran ahead. Let her be for now, Harable said as Ben made to run after her. Once she has had time to get her anger out of her system, she might be willing to listen. Ben sighed. I hope you're right. Also, there's something else I have to say. Harable turned towards him. I'm sorry your Phyrexione got hurt because of me. Fighters will always be wounded in battle, Harable told him. You did not make my Phyrexione fight beside you, and once they were hurt, you cared more about their well-being than forcing them to continue fighting. While they have improved, thanks to sparring with you, I doubt they would have been a match for OMNITRIX. Thank you once again for protecting them. Ben smiled as he rubbed his neck. Sure thing. So, Harable said, do you see Lillianette and my Phyrexione as your friends? Ben chuckled sheepishly. Yes, and you and Starrick too. Harable blinked, her eyes widening slightly. You see Static and I as your friends? If that's all right, Ben hastily, worried he might have overstepped his bounds. Harable was silent and Ben started to worry that he might have gone too far. Aside from my Phyrexione, I have never had anyone to consider a friend before, Harable said. What? No one? Not even Stack? Stack is indifferent and therefore tolerable if nothing else, Harable explained. Very few of us go out of our way to befriend each other. Well, that kinda SCK, Ben said bluntly. That's our lot in life, Harable said, and Ben noticed that her voice seemed melancholic. Even though Lord Aizen restored reason to us, most only care about their bloodlust. She closed her eyes. And using the power Lord Aizen bestowed upon them to achieve it on a greater scale. Ben was feeling depressed just hearing about this, but he couldn't blame Harable. Aizen might have improved her life since she was a hollow, but it was still far from perfect. I know it probably wouldn't matter, but I wish there was something I could do. Harable stared at Ben for a moment before the look softened. You truly are a noble person, Ben Tennyson. What was that mysterious man planning when he sent you into our midst? Apparently some kind of game, Ben said. Hopefully I'll find out what he's actually up to. Somehow. Harable nodded. That's all we can hope for now. Yeah, Ben said, seeing that there really was nothing they could do about that little problem at the moment. So, about my ultimate aliens. As I have already, I do not blame you, Harable repeated. Though I hope in time we might prove ourselves worthy of your trust. Lord Aizen has done incredible things for Hukomundo, and I hope you can see that he only means the best. Maybe, Ben said, and Harable could see that response would have to do for now. The two walked in silence until they reached the door to Stark's chambers. Thanks again, Harable, Ben said appreciatively. For, everything. You're welcome, Ben, Harable said cordially. And thank you again for all you have done for my Phyrexione and for your consideration. After a moment she added, and for considering me a friend despite your uncertainty about us. Ben smiled. Well, I guess, since we're friends, you feel like hanging out with me, Lillinet and the others, he paused. Provided Lillinet will stop being mad at me. Hanging out? Harable asked. Sure, Ben said. And maybe we can get Sterk to join in. Seriously, I have never seen somebody sleep in as much as he has. And I would now. I've slept in plenty of times, especially on the weekends. Harable was surprised by this offer, but actually took it into consideration. She hesitated, do not know. However, I will at least consider it. Ben smiled again. Sounds good to me. Later, Harable. Harable nodded and walked down the way she had come. With that, Ben took a deep breath and walked into Stark's chambers. So, you managed to beat Luppy and Enoitra, was the first thing Ben heard the moment he entered. He found Stark sitting upright on his pile of pillows, looking more awake than usual. Lillinet was sitting off to the side, her arms around her legs and her back to the others. Yeah, Ben said, looking over at Lillinet. I did. Lillinet also told me about your ultimate forms, Stark said, but he still sounded so nonchalant that Ben wasn't sure if he was actually interested or still indifferent. And how you kept them a secret from us in case you needed to fight your way out of here. Yeah, Ben mumbled. She also said Harable didn't blame you, Stark went on. I don't either. Lillinet flinched when she heard that but did not say a thing. She just hugged herself tighter. Pretty clever of you not to show all your cards from the get-go, Stark said. I get that you don't really trust us. Don't have much of a reason to. Lillinet glared at Stark out of the corner of her eye, angry that her other half didn't share her feelings on the matter. Ben ruffled his hair as he tried to think of how best to approach this situation. He really should have considered and prepared for the possibility of revealing his ultimate aliens early. He made his way over to Lillinet. Hey, Lillinet, he said as he crouched beside her. Lillinet's response was to turn her head to the side. Ben sighed. Look, I'm sorry for keeping secrets from you guys. It's just that a lot of stuff has happened to me recently, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Probably hasn't helped that a lot of the people you've met so far have tried to kill you, Stark added. Well, yeah, that too, Ben conceded. But I wasn't doing it to be mean, Lillinet. Lillinet sighed. I know. You do have every right to keep some stuff to yourself. It's just, she paused. What's wrong? Ben asked. Even though we're all comrades, Lillinet said quietly, none of us really hang out with each other. Yeah, Harable told me nobody really tries to make friends with each other, Ben said. Even though Sterk and I can finally be around people who won't die just by being near us, Lillinet said. It's still, she lowered her head, lonely. Stark shifted his body to look at Lillinet, just as surprised as Ben was by this confession. Then you came along and things started changing, Lillinet told the hero. I never would have imagined myself actually hanging out with Harable and her Phyrexione, but then you showed up and now we hang out all the time. She smiled. It feels nice. Stark looked away, taking in Lillinet's words. Then when you fought Luppy, you called us your friends, Lillinet said, and Stark's attention was definitely caught, looking back and forth between Lillinet and Ben. I meant what I said, Lillinet, Ben told her firmly. And to be honest, I'm sure I can trust you guys. You, Stark, Harable, Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun. Lillinet finally looked at him. You still don't trust Lord Aizen? She asked incredulously. Back in my universe, I faced plenty of people who used their charms to win people over, only to show they were just being used, Ben explained. Lord Aizen would never do that, Lillinet insisted fiercely. Maybe you're right, Lillinet, Ben said, trying to placate her. But I didn't know that. I was just being careful. Lillinet sighed again. I want to be mad at you. I know, Ben said quietly. But, Lillinet went on, I guess what you're saying does make sense. So does this mean you forgive me? Ben asked with a smile. Lillianette scrunched up her face and Ben had to fight the urge to laugh. It reminded him so much of when he and Gwen would do the same thing as kids. Fine, Lillianette finally said, and Ben's smile grew. But you better make it up to me, Ben. She pointed a finger at him accusingly. All right, Ben said as he held his hands out in front of him. So, what do I have to do to make it up to you? Lillianette scrunched her face up again as she tried to think of a suitable atonement. I can't think of anything right now, she confessed. But when I do, I'm gonna make sure you do it. Ben chuckled. All right, Lillianette. I'll keep that in mind. Lillianette smiled and all traces of hostility were gone. So, Stark said, drawing the two's attention. You really see us as your friends? Ben nodded. I do. Stark stared at Ben for a moment before falling back onto his pillows. At first, it seemed he was about to fall asleep again, but instead he stared up at the ceiling, deep in thought. A friend, huh? Stark muttered, more to himself than to the others. He closed his eyes. That doesn't sound too bad. Ben smiled while Lillianette had a huge grin. So, Shale, Aizen said to his eighth espada. Both were in the latter's lab. Can it be done? I may need to do a few more calculations, Lord Aizen, Shale admitted. But by all accounts, I don't see why it shouldn't work. Excellent, Aizen said with a smile. Good work, Shale. Shale bowed dramatically. Your praise is most rewarding, Lord Aizen, and I thank you with the utmost gratitude for assigning me such a task worthy of my intellect. This, by far, will be my greatest work. We still need the means to make this experiment possible, Aizen said, though I already have something in mind. Oh? Shale pushed his glasses further up his nose. May I be informed as to what it is? Aizen chuckled. Ben does have some sympathy for hollows and wishes to make life easier for them instead of this kill or be killed world. Perhaps, with his aliens, that just might be possible. Shale's eyes gleamed. Do tell, Lord Aizen. Aizen smiled. All in good time, Shale. First I need to have a talk with Ben to see if he can do it. If so, then things will become so much easier. Miller Rose screamed as she swung her sword down, only for it to be blocked by Diamond Head's arm. However, Sung Sun took advantage of the distraction to strike the crystalline hero in the leg. It didn't hurt him, but she had put enough force into her blow to knock his leg out from under him, causing him to lurch forward. Apache took advantage of his state to launch a bala at him. But Diamond Head had managed to see her charging her attack and quickly created a wall of crystal out of the ground to block it. Apache unleashed a fury of bala upon the wall and Diamond Head quickly touched the dial on his chest and transformed into Armadillo, diving into the ground. He's gone underground, Miller Rose told the others. All three quickly leaped into the air and hovered over the sand. Smoke him out, Apache yelled to her teammates as energy started gathering around her horn. The other two nodded and began charging their own Zero as well. The desert area lit up in a blend of pink, orange, and red, creating a decent crater in the ground, but there was no sign of their opponent. Suddenly a giant vine shot out of the ground and swung at the three. The trio dodged and began relentlessly hacking at the growth, cutting it in two. However, two more vines emerged and reached for them as well. As the girls focused on the vines, Swampfire rose out of the ground. Fireballs formed in his hands and he began throwing them. He made sure not to actually hit the girls, however, merely seeking to put them on the defensive. The girls grimaced and backpedaled. Split up, Sung Sun said. Right, Miller Rose and Apache said together, and all three girls split off in different directions. Divide and conquer? Swampfire grinned. No problem. He tapped the Ultimatrix dial and transformed into Echo Echo. I can. Do you? One better. He split into 9 copies of himself, 3 for each of his opponents. The 3 trios of Echo Echoes raised their heads and screamed ultrasonic waves at their opponents, who were moving faster to dodge the dangerous attacks. Apache flung her chakrams at her Echo Echoes, but one fired a sonic attack that knocked her weapons out of the air. Grumbling, Apache began charging her horn and fired a Zero. Seeing it build up, the 3 Echo Echoes stood back to back and created a dome of sound around them, just in time as the Zero struck the dome. Apache grit her teeth as the dome managed to hold. Miller Rose and Sung Sun were faring better, but only just. They knew by now that the best tactic was preventing Echo Echo from opening his mouth, so they decided to put him on the defensive. Unfortunately, the little guy and his clones were too tricky for their tastes. If they didn't want to get overwhelmed, they had to take Ben down now, or at least make him switch aliens again. Sung Sun darted her gaze around, trying to find some way to gain an edge. And she had to do it soon. Her Echo Echoes were closing in on her. Just as they started preparing themselves for another attack, Sung Sun finally got an idea. She landed on the sand and struck the ground with enough force to kick up sand all around her. The Echo Echoes hacked and wheezed as the sand had wound up getting in their mouths, leaving them open for Sung Sun to strike them all. Miller Rose and Apache saw what their teammate had done and grinned at such an effective tactic. Oh, one Echo Echo mumbled when he realized what he and the other copies were in for. Apache and Miller Rose blasted the ground, launching sand everywhere, the granules getting in the eyes and mouths of the Echo Echoes before they could do anything, causing them to cry out and cough as they tried to remove the sand. Unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough as the girls swooped in and struck their opponents relentlessly. The hero and his copies were sprawled all over the place, groaning in pain. Weakly, they all merged back into one and Echo Echo tapped the Ultimatrix dial again, transforming into a different alien. This one sported a blue and black cloak that was wrapped around its lithe body with bulbous green eyes and a teeth-filled frown that caused it to resemble an eerie wraith. Apache groaned in frustration. Just when it looked like they finally had Ben on the ropes, he busted out a new guy. The new alien unfolded its cloak to reveal that it wasn't a cloak at all. It was actually wings and a large antenna, now causing him to resemble a Mothman. Apache didn't want to give this guy a chance to attack, so she scooped up her chakrams and threw them again. The moth alien suddenly became transparent, the chakrams flying through him harmlessly. Apache slouched. Another guy with intangibility. And that's not all, the alien replied with a voice that sounded like a low, cold breeze. He flew straight at Apache, who struggled to think of how to block something that could become intangible. The Mothman flew through her arm, and she cried out as the limb became numb instantly. She looked at her arm and her eyes widened when she saw that it was encased in ice. "I call this one," the alien said quietly, "Big Chill." "Clever," Miller Rose muttered dryly. She and Sung Sun used Sonido to reach Apache and pull her out of harm's way. Apache hissed as she tried to free her arm from the ice. "Stay here, Apache," Sung Sun told her firmly before she and Miller Rose took off to resume the fight. "How are we supposed to beat him now?" Miller Rose grumbled. "I don't know," Sung Sun admitted. "At the moment, all we can do is hope for an opening." Miller Rose narrowed her eyes. "Great." She gripped the hilt of her sword. Big Chill flew at them, and the two made to keep away. Even though they knew it was pointless, they began firing bala at him. It went just as they expected, the attacks passing through him harmlessly. It was now a game of chase, Big Chill pursuing the two and them trying to maintain their distance. But Big Chill was having none of that as he unleashed an icy vapor from his mouth, striking the girls. Both girls cried out as ice began forming over their bodies. They quickly moved back to the ground, Big Chill following them as he kept his cold breath upon them. Both girls were now trapped up to their necks in blocks of ice. "Chill for a while," Big Chill joked before chuckling at his own pun, which only earned him annoyed looks from the trio. But the girls were far from out as they flared their spiritual pressure, the sheer force shattering their icy prisons. Miller Rose and Apache lunged to attack Big Chill, who simply went intangible, causing the two to collide with each other. "Miller Rose," Apache barked. "Watch where you're going, you stupid klutz." "Me?" Miller Rose hollered. "You're the one who almost took my eye out with your stupid horn, you bullhead." "You're both idiots," Sung Sun remarked. "Did you forget about his intangibility so soon? I know you two are slow on the uptake, but I didn't think you were this bad." "Do you want to die instead?" The other two rounded on her. "Want to call it quits for now?" Big Chill asked, hovering over them and staying intangible so they didn't catch him off guard. The question earned him 3 pairs of glares, though it gave Big Chill a sense of pride. "We seem to be at a stalemate," Sung Sun noted. "We can't hurt you, but your ice won't hold us so easily, and since you have the upper hand, I doubt you'll be changing aliens anytime soon." "Maybe," Big Chill replied, and Sung Sun wondered if he naturally spoke in such a, no pun intended, chilly tone, or if he did it on purpose. Either way, it personally gave Sung Sun the creeps. Not that she would ever admit it out loud. She looked over at her teammates, giving them a hard look. Both girls looked aggravated, but, seeing that there was nothing they could do, reluctantly lowered their weapons. "All right, fine," Apache growled, as if driving the point home. It might have been her imagination, but Sung Sun could have sworn that Big Chill's blank face briefly changed into a smug smile, or as close to one as he could, before changing back to normal. Ben was about to speak when Sung Sun dashed forward, grabbed Ben by the arm and flipped him onto the ground. Ben didn't have time to register what had happened until he saw Sung Sun's sai pointing right at his face, a smug look on her face now. Ben stared at her for a brief moment and then made a face. "Cheap shot, Sung Sun." "Well, we never actually said the fight was over," Sung Sun said airily before holding out a hand to help Ben up. Implied perhaps, but never actually stated. Miller Rose grinned and Apache snickered at their teammate's move. Ben rolled his eyes as he grabbed Sung Sun's arm, and then proceeded to pull her forward. Sung Sun was not expecting the move and could only let out a brief cry of shock as she sprawled onto the ground. Now Miller Rose and Apache were laughing heartily. Sung Sun picked herself up from the ground, glaring at Ben, who only grinned back. "Oh man, you should see your face, Sung Sun," Apache said as she clutched her sides. Miller Rose was leaning against her sword as she laughed. "How does it feel to have the tables turned on you?" For once, Sung Sun found herself unable to think of anything snarky to say. Ben picked himself up and held his hand out to Sung Sun. Sung Sun turned her attention to him, and for a moment, Ben wondered if she was going to get her revenge. When she grabbed his hand though, she did nothing. So Ben helped her to her feet unhindered. But the moment she got to her feet, Sung Sun leaned forward. "I will remember this, Ben," Sung Sun whispered in a low, deceptively friendly tone. "And I will get you back when we spar again." She pulled back, covering her mouth with her sleeve, feeling pleased with herself when Ben just stood there, staring at her. Although their laughter died down, Miller Rose and Apache were still grinning. "What's the matter, Sung Sun?" Apache said as she clipped her chakrams back onto her wrists. "Sore loser?" If Sung Sun had any sort of retort, it was cut off when HAREM, who had been watching the entire fight, approached them. "You four did well today," she praised before turning her attention to her Fraxian. "You three have improved." She noticed that while pleased with her compliments, they looked rather downcast. "What's wrong?" "We appreciate you saying that we've improved, Lady HAREM," Apache said, "but we didn't beat him." "You've still made progress," HAREM encouraged. "You've displayed great resourcefulness in the heat of battle and forced Ben to select an alien with an unexpected advantage. The fact that he needed to resort to an alien with a power like intangibility proves how much of a threat you are to him." She then turned to Ben. "And you, Ben, have pushed the girls to fight more strategically, using the environment and their opponent's weaknesses to their advantage." "Don't forget," Lilinet, who had also been watching the battle, finally spoke up. "Ben hasn't used his ultimate aliens yet." "True," HAREM acknowledged, "but the girls have not used their released states either. And while Ben's ultimate aliens have proven more than a match for an Espada, OMNITRIX is nothing but a brutal savage who relies on sheer force. Whether or not my Fraxian would win is unknown, but I would like to believe that they would stand a better chance." Lilinet looked skeptical. HAREM's Fraxian were happy with their leader's praise, and Ben took HAREM's words into consideration. Despite sparring for a few rounds, HAREM had her Fraxian hold off from using their released states. Ben wondered what kind of special powers they might have. "Well, since the fight's over," Lilinet spoke up, "what do you guys want to do? Relax in the pool a bit more?" "Sounds good to me," Ben said, wiping his forehead. "After a fight like that, I could use some relaxation," Apache said, rubbing the back of her neck. Miller Rose stretched her arms from side to side. "I'm surprised at how much I actually enjoy swimming. It's quite a nice pastime." "You mean it's the only pastime," Lilinet added. That earned a hearty laugh from 4 Orankar and 1 human. Although she didn't partake, HAREM couldn't help feeling a small smile forming behind her mask. She blinked in surprise by this new development, but found it to be a nice feeling. The group went their separate ways to get ready for swimming. "Hey, Ben," Lilynette said as she and said human made their way to their room. "What's up, Lilynette?" "I was thinking, could we spar some time?" "Oh?" Ben blinked. "What brought this on?" "I want to get strong too," Lilynette exclaimed, stunning Ben by both the volume and conviction in her voice. "Oh, okay," Ben said, still taken aback by this turn of events. "I don't have a problem with it. Maybe we could even ask Apache and the others if they want to spar with us too." Lilynette grimaced at this. "What's wrong? Worried they're going to be jerks to you or something?" "Yeah," Lilynette admitted quietly. "Don't worry, Lilynette," Ben reassured her. "I doubt they will, and even if they do, I'm sure HAREM will get them to back off. And I'll step in if I need to." Lilynette smiled. "Thanks, Ben." Ben smiled back. "No problem." They reached their room and went inside. But the moment they stepped through the door, they froze when they saw that Aizen was inside, engaged in deep conversation with Stark about something. And from the uncharacteristically serious look on Stark's face, it had to be something very important. Of course, the two became aware that they were no longer alone. Aizen beamed when he saw who it was. "Ah, Ben, just who I was looking for. I'm guessing that you were training with HAREM's Fraxian again." "Yeah," Ben said, looking back and forth between Aizen and Stark, the latter still having a serious and contemplative look on his face. "What's going on?" At first Ben thought that Aizen was going to talk to him about OMNITRIX. He was surprised that the Soul Reaper hadn't approached him about it already. "Well, Ben, Shale and I are conducting an experiment, and I think your help would be vital in making it possible." Ben tried not to flinch as he thought of the scientist Arankar and the word experiment in the same sentence. "What is it?" "Well, Ben," Aizen said amicably, "I think I might know a way to improve the state of Hugomundo, but I'll need your aliens to achieve it." Ben raised a brow at this. "What could they do?" Aizen chuckled. "Well, Ben, our talk about the state of Hugomundo had me realize that perhaps I have not tried hard enough to truly improve life here. Perhaps I could have found an actual way to keep hollows from devouring each other. But the desire to fill that emptiness, the desire to eat, will always be there. That's when I decided I could provide them with a substitute." Ben tilted his head. "Like what?" "That's where your aliens come in, particularly Swampfire. I know he is capable of producing seeds, so I thought that perhaps we can infuse them with spiritual energy, and then you can grow them into fruits. Hollows would be able to feed on these fruits instead of each other. I know we have seeds of our own, but I don't want to risk our food supplies." Ben and Lilynette both stared at Aizen, then at each other as they took this in. "You really think that could work?" Ben asked, though out of curiosity and not skepticism. "We would have to test it," Aizen admitted. "Though personally, I am confident this will work." Ben crossed his arms. He could see the benefits of giving the hollows something else besides each other to devour, but it couldn't be that simple. "Will they try to fight each other so they can get more food than each other?" "This is just the first phase," Aizen explained further. "We'll go and see Shale. I hope you don't mind me taking some initiative before informing you. Once we are certain this will work, we can spread the seeds across Hugomundo. With enough time and effort, perhaps we can transform this land into a true paradise." Lilynette's visible eye widened immensely as she and Ben shared another look. "Are you up for it, Ben?" Aizen asked. Ben couldn't deny that Aizen's idea sounded promising, and he thought of HAREM and her girls. If they would make this work, hollows like them wouldn't be preyed upon anymore. "Hey, does this mean that hollows who eat the plants can get stronger?" "No doubt," Aizen said in a matter-of-fact manner. "A place where one could become stronger without having to sacrifice others. And if we manage to do this in all of Hugomundo, everyone could become strong. If we plan it out carefully," Aizen said, emphasizing the carefully part, "then there shouldn't be any more weak hollows." Lilynette let out a low gasp as she looked over at Stark again. If everyone was strong, then powerful beings like them wouldn't have to be lonely anymore. She looked over at Ben, who was put off by the pleading look on her face. "Well," he settled, "worth a shot." Aizen smiled. "Excellent. Follow me." Ben, Stark, and Lilynette were led back outside to the courtyard, though Ben was curious as to why they were there. They walked further away from the spot that Ben and the girls trained at. Ben wasn't sure how long they had walked, but he felt that his legs were getting a little sore. That, and he hadn't sat down since his last spar. It looked like they were possibly in the middle of Las Notches, give to take a few feet. As Aizen had said, Shale was already there waiting for them. Lord Aizen, Shale beamed happily. His smile grew when he saw that Ben was with him. Ben, I'm so pleased to see you. Then he noticed Stark and Lilinet, becoming extremely amused by the sight. Well, Stark. I wasn't expecting you to be interested in this project. The fact that I've managed to interest the Primera Espada is an accomplishment in and of itself. Whatever, Stark said nonchalantly. Shale simply chuckled before looking over at Ben. So, Ben, how much do you know about our plan? I know about the spirit plants, Ben replied. Oh, so Lord Aizen didn't fill you in on the details, Shale asked. Ben looked over at Aizen. I believed that it would be better if we explained it to him once we were here, the Shinigami replied. Fair enough, Lord Aizen, Shale said before addressing Ben again. If I had considered this beforehand, I would already have set up an area for us to grow these plants, but since we've recently created this plan, we'll have to improvise. Improvise? Ben asked. Using your aliens, Shale explained. We could possibly create our very own oasis right here in Las Notches. Now, you might be wondering why we're growing them inside instead of outside so the hollows can eat them. Well, for starters, think of this as a test run. Then, if the experiment is a success, we can start spreading them throughout Las Notches. Quite the tall order, I'm sure, but we need to guarantee that all the Arankar can be provided for. After all, we are the ones maintaining a semblance of order within Huco Mundo. After Las Notches, we can press on. Perhaps the Forest of Minos. Makes sense, Ben said, curious about this Forest of Minos. So, how do we do this? We have most of the materials right here, Shale said, sweeping his arms over the area. We have plenty of soil, our own sun, we just need to make some adjustments. What kind of adjustments? Lilinet asked, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Primarily a source of water for the plants to grow, Shale said. Perhaps our very own lake. A lake? Stark asked, his eyes widening a fraction before looking over at Aizen. This is all right? The courtyard of Las Notches is wide enough, Aizen said casually. Well, Ben said as he activated the Ultimatrix, turning the dial to Armadillo. Let's get started. Haribel's Fraxian were all relaxing in the pool while Haribel sat off to the side, looking off in the distance. I wonder where Ben and Lilinet are, Apache said. They should have been here by now. Something must have come up, Miller Rose said casually, swimming through the pool. Or maybe Lord Aizen needed to see Ben about something. What would he need to see Ben about now, though? Sung Sun wondered. Whatever he needs to, Haribel said. If Lord Aizen does need to see Ben about something, it would obviously be important. You're right, Lady Harry, Apache started to reply when they heard a rumble in the distance. An all too familiar rumble. That sounds like Armadillo, Mila Rose said as she straightened herself up. Is somebody picking another fight with Ben? Sung Sun asked with a frown. Haribel narrowed her eyes and activated her Pesquisa to be sure. No, it doesn't seem that Ben is fighting anyone. He is with Lord Aizen, along with Stark, Lilinet, and Shale. So I was right, Mila Rose said. I wonder what's going on, and why Shale is there. Well, let's go see, Apache said, already climbing out of the pool. Armadillo climbed out of the massive pit he had made. Excellent work, Ben, Shale praised happily. Now we just need you to turn into Water Hazard and fill up the lake. Lilinet looked inside the pit. That's a big hole. He might be here a while. Take as long as you need, Shale said unbothered. I don't see any reason to rush things. Armadillo peered into the pit too. Maybe Water Hazard isn't the right one for this job. I've got an idea to speed things up. Oh? Shale asked. Armadillo touched the Ultimatrix dial again, transforming into Big Chill. Shale watched curiously as Big Chill flew into the pit. Once the moth alien landed, he put his hands on the ground. Aizen, Static, and Shale's eyes all widened as ice began forming all around the pit and spreading. Big Chill unfolded his wings as the ice built up around the pit. Once he emerged, the entire hole was completely filled, looking like a makeshift ice rink. Before anyone could comment on it, Big Chill tapped the dial again and transformed into NRG, who put his hands on the ice as his powers activated, while also shooting a beam of heat from the openings in his helmet. Well, that's creative, Shale said as he watched. Aizen nodded approvingly, Stark just watched, and Lillinet grinned at her friend's cleverness. In a matter of minutes, the ice was melted and the pit had become a small lake. Wonderful, Shale said in delight. Wonderful, Ben, your ingenuity never ceases to amaze me. Now we just need Swampfire to plant his seeds. Yeah, about that, NRG said. I don't know if Swampfire will work. He's got seeds, but I've only grown vines with them, not specific stuff like fruits. I think I'll need actual fruit seeds. But if that's the case, why didn't you say anything earlier? Aizen questioned. Because I've got another plant guy who might get the job done instead. He tapped the dial again and transformed into another plant alien. This one possessed a big blue eye in the middle of his head, a Venus flytrap-like structure around said head, and the lower half of his body consisted of tentacle-like vines. Pods of some sort were protruding from his back. So what's this guy called? Lillinet asked. This one's called Wildvine, the new alien said as he took some of the pods off of his back. Maybe these can work? Shale and Aizen both studied the pods carefully. Not what I was expecting, the 8th Espada said, but they're worth a try. Wildvine nodded as he started planting the pods around the edge of the lake. Okay, done, Wildvine said once he was finished. Now what? Now for these, Shale produced what appeared to be 5 rods with large, red crystals embedded at the tips. I was inspired by your chromostone form to create these. Much like your alien, they serve as conductors. We will use these to absorb large quantities of energy, which they will spread throughout the water and soil. Afterwards, we can use either Wildvine or Swampfire to accelerate the growth of the seeds and our oasis shall be complete. Just plant these along the rim of the lake. Wildvine nodded again. All right. He took the rods from Shale and began planting them into the ground. Thank you, Ben, Shale said as the hero worked. Now, to power the crystals. Hey, what's going on? Everyone turned to see Harable and her girls, the latter wearing their swimming clothes, walking towards them. Harable, Shale said, raising his arms. How wonderful to see you. Shale, Harable said politely. She noticed the lake and Ben planting the rods. What's going on? My latest project, Shale explained. And so far it's coming along wonderfully, and you will be a great asset to it. Harable's eyes narrowed and her Fraxian frowned, though they did relax a bit when they remembered that both Aizen and Stark were there. What is it? Harable asked. These crystals can conduct spiritual energy, Shale explained. Having 2 of the strongest Espada here will be perfect for them. What are the crystals for? Apache asked. What is all of this for? We're creating fruit for hollows to eat, Wildvine called to her as he continued planting the rods. Instead of themselves, Lillinet threw in. All 4 girls stared. Is that possible? Harable asked in a quiet tone. She sounded somewhat uncertain, but at the same time hopeful. We'll soon find out, Shale informed her. First, would you and Stark like to do the honors? Static and Harable looked at each other, not saying a word. Stark sighed before stepping forward. All right, guess I'll go first. So, I just need to put my energy into the crystals. If you want, you can simply fire a Zero at them, Shale said casually. Stark let out another sigh as he approached one of the crystals. A blue ball of energy formed under his jaw before blasting toward it. Like Shale had said, the moment the Zero reached the crystal, it was absorbed. Harable pulled out her sword, energy building up around her weapon before she unleashed her Zero, which came out in a wide arc compared to the Zero that Ben had seen before at another crystal. Despite how wide the Zero was, all of it was absorbed into the crystals, which started to glow blue and yellow. Excellent, excellent, Shale cheered. So now Ben does his thing on the plants? Lillinet asked. Not yet, Shale said abruptly, snapping out of his excitement. Let us wait a bit so the plants can properly absorb the spirit energy. Then Ben can, as you've put it, do his thing. Harable and Stark fired more Zero into the remaining crystals. The rods shone with bright yellow and blue hues, which reflected off of the lake's surface. Thank you, Static, Harable, Aizen said kindly to them. And thank you, Ben, for making all of this possible. Don't thank me just yet, Ben said, looking at the lake. I want to see if this will work first. Well said, Aizen agreed. That will be all for now, everyone. I'm certain that Shale will contact us when he feels the time is right. Absolutely, Lord Aizen, Shale said with a flourishing bow. Seeing that they were dismissed, everyone started back to their respective rooms. Lady Harable, Apache said, looking back over her shoulder at the lake. Do you think it will work? Harable herself looked back over at the oasis, staring at it for a moment before turning back around and resuming her walk. I couldn't say, Apache, but I would like to believe so. I would like to hope so. After that, the return trip was filled with nothing but silence. An entire day passed and Ben, Stark, Harable, and their Fraxian were gathered around the oasis, with Aizen and Shale already present. The other Espada are not here? Harable couldn't help asking. At the moment, only we know of this project. I didn't want to inform the others until we are absolutely certain, Aizen explained before looking at Ben. Go ahead, Ben. Ben nodded as he activated the Ultimatrix. Once he transformed, Swampire raised his hands and released his gas over the oasis. As it spread, long, thick vines sprouted out of the ground. Up and up they rose, pods emerging out of them. The pods only somewhat resembled the ones that Wildvine had planted earlier. Now, they were a sheer white, almost translucent color. Soon, the oasis was completely surrounded by large, lush foliage. Swampfire lowered his hands. Done. So, Lilynette said as she walked over to a nearby vine and poked one of the pods. Did it work? Use your pesquisa, Shale said. Find out for yourself. The Arrancar closed their eyes. Altogether their eyes widened in shock. It worked, Apache cried. The plants are full of spiritual energy. Yeah, Lilynette jumped, punching the air. Success, Shale clapped happily. A success, he put his hands on Ben's shoulders and beamed. We did it, Ben, we did it. Incredible, Mila Rose breathed. Amazing, Sung Sun added. A miracle, Harable whispered to herself. She approached one of the fruits, brushing her fingers against it. Ben, Shale, Aizen said. Thank you both for making this possible. Oh, Lord Aizen, Shale gushed. It was your inspiration, your brilliance that brought this into existence. Ben and I simply laid down the groundwork. Aizen shook his head. No, Shale, it was your planning, your work, your contributions made this a reality. And now, a new future awaits Hugo Mundo. I think it's time for us to inform the others. Aizen gathered the rest of the Espada, along with Jin and Tozen, at the oasis. Luppy and Enoitra were looking at Ben with disgust and hatred, and several of the Espada with higher numbers were eyeing him with caution. Barrigan sneered at him before focusing his attention on Aizen. Ben noticed that Yami was missing. When he asked, he was told that Yami was still recuperating from a wound he had received during the trip to Karakura town. They're scared of you, Lilynette said, noticing the looks Ben was receiving. They know about how you kicked Luppy and Enoitra's asses, and that they don't stand a chance against you. Ben put his hands in his pockets and sighed. Gentlemen and ladies of the Espada, Aizen said to his gathered warriors, I have wonderful news. Here before you lies the great handiwork of Shale and Ben. You shall now bear witness to the fruits of their labors. Jin chuckled. Literally in this case, huh, Lord Aizen? Well said, Jin, Aizen replied in amusement. Now, no doubt you are wondering why I would call you here for this. Well, the fruits of the oasis contain spiritual energy. Not only will we be able to provide the hollows of Hugo Mundo with an alternative food source, but something just as beneficial. Lilynette, would you like to do the honors? Lilynette let out a squeak as she became aware of all eyes being on her, in surprise and confusion. The only three exceptions were Tozen, Aizen, and Shale. Me, Lord Aizen. Of course, Lilynette. Aizen gently encouraged her. Taking a deep breath, Lilynette made her way to one of the fruits and plucked it from the vine. She looked at it for a moment before taking a bite. She winced as a slightly sour taste touched her tongue, but the bitterness was soon forgotten by a taste of pure sweet, almost creamy flavor. Blinking at the unique texture, she started devouring the fruit. The Espada's eyes widened. Her spiritual pressure just increased, Zomri said. Exactly, Aizen said. These fruits can increase the spiritual pressure of whoever eats them. Which means, OMNITRIX realized, whoever eats these can become stronger. Indeed, Aizen answered. A wave of silence fell on the group as the assembled Espada took in this new information. The majority of them were eyeing the fruits greedily, particularly Luppy and OMNITRIX. Barragan rubbed his chin as he looked the fruits over. Ben, Static, and Harable did not like that look. Now, that doesn't mean everybody should start chowing down on the fruits, Shale said to his fellow Arankar sharply. If that happened, this place would be devastated in less than a day. Now, Ben, everyone rounded on Ben when he said this. Since our experiment has proven a success, we can start preparing for the others. This definitely got the Espada's attention. Luppy and OMNITRIX were particularly gleeful at this announcement. Barragan, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. Others? Lillinet exclaimed. You want Ben to make more of these? I did say that we would need enough fruit to provide for all of Las Notches, didn't I? Shale said snidely. Lillinet grit her teeth at the haughty way Shale had addressed her. Of course, I'll need to start constructing more conductors, and that will take some time. I have confidence in your abilities, Shale, Aizen reassured him before looking at the rest of the Espada. You are welcome to the fruits of this oasis, but do not eat all of them. We need to conserve these for the time being, and none of you are to fight each other for the fruits. Is that understood? The Espada said nothing, but one could tell that they all got the message. We have ourselves a wonderful blessing, Aizen went on. This will aid us in our war against the Soul Society, but also, Hollows will be able to quench their hunger without devouring each other. We can then guide them into making Hugo Mundo a utopia for those that the Soul Reapers have so callously abandoned. And it is all thanks to the brilliance of Shalaporo Grants and BEN10. Hooray, Lord Aizen, Zamari cried, throwing his hands in the air. Your generosity knows no bounds. Hooray for Shalaporo and BEN10 for serving as your heralds to this glorious future. OMNITRIX let out a loud bellow. Well, Shale, I gotta say, I'm very impressed. Just think about how powerful we could be after eating these. He leered at Ben and Harable. Luppy was sporting a twisted grin as the implications dawned on him as well. Indeed, the third Espada said calmly. Imagine how powerful we all will be. OMNITRIX scowled at this. Luppy flinched when Harable turned her eye towards him as well, still very upset that he had tried attacking her Fraxian as well. Ulquiorra looked at the plants before turning away in disinterest. He was the only one who had not been moved by what they had all learned. Was he confident in his abilities without the fruit, or did he just not see the idea of becoming stronger worthy of a reaction? Ben, you have done a wonderful thing, Tozen praised the human. Truly, you are a noble and compassionate being. BEN10, the maker of miracles, Jin joked. I just wanted to help out, Ben said modestly, though he couldn't help but smile. And you have certainly done that, Aizen said. Shale, I would like for you to get started on the conductors as soon as possible. Alert Ben once you are ready with them. Shale bowed. Absolutely, Lord Aizen. You won't be disappointed. Aizen then addressed the rest of the Espada. That will be all. Feel free to inform your Fraxian as I will be briefing the rest of the numeros myself. However, I will say again that the fruits are not to be touched for the time being. You are all dismissed. And with that, the Espada all departed back to their respective chambers. Only Ben, Aizen, his Soul Reaper cohorts, Stark and Harable's groups remained. Aizen smiled at Ben again. Great things are going to happen, Ben, he said. Soon, Hugo Mundo will be a much better place. Ben couldn't help smiling this time. I hope it will. By the way, have you managed to find out anything about what Soul Society is doing? I mean, they've got to be making plans of their own right. I wouldn't worry about that too much, Ben, Aizen said calmly. The Soul Society is full of powerful warriors, but they are very predictable. I told you before that such a trait was one of their biggest weaknesses, their desire to hold on to their old ways instead of embracing change. This will give us an advantage. We do have a possible lead regarding Karakura Town, but it will require further investigation. Is it about that masked guy? Ben inquired. No, this is about something else, Aizen replied. I'll let you know once I have sufficient data to confirm my suspicions. Ben frowned but shrugged. All right. Aizen smiled again. Take care, Ben, and thank you once more for your help. Aizen headed back inside. Good for you, Ben, Jin said honestly. Congratulations, Ben, Tozen added as they both followed Aizen. Well, Stark said nonchalantly, that went well. Lillinet rounded on him. That went well, she kicked him angrily. That went well, Stark, don't you realize what this means? I know, Lillinet, Stark said quietly. I know. Lillinet huffed, putting her hands on her hips as she glared at him. Harable turned towards Ben. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, Apache said, looking at the oasis. This is great. No more eat or be eaten, Miller rose. No more being preyed upon by others. No more forced sacrifices, Sung's son added. But we must be careful, Harable spoke up, the seriousness in her tone drawing everyone's attention. I saw the way Anoitra and Luppy were looking at those fruits, and they have clearly shown their willingness to disobey Lord Aizen's orders. I suggest we keep a close eye on the oasis to make sure they don't try anything. I wouldn't worry about them, Lady Harable, Miller Rose said confidently. You and Ben could easily take those guys down. While they do have me concerned, Harable went on, what really worries me is Berrigan. Lillinet and Harable's Fraxian stared. Stack looked at her sharply. You saw that too, huh? He's already the second Espada, Ben said. He's that desperate to be the first. When all he got was silence as a response, Ben already knew that something serious was at work here. Ben, Harable said quietly. Before Lord Aizen came and brought order to Hugo Berrigan was its ruler. Wait, what? It's true, Apache said. Berrigan was pompous and arrogant, Miller Rose clenched her fists. He believed that everything here belonged to him simply because he said so. Las Notches was his palace, though there was no actual building before he came here, Harable added. He was so full of himself that he believed the sky itself was his roof. Ben was floored by this information, not just at Berrigan's arrogance, but the fact that Stack was more powerful than the actual ruler of Hugo, and the fact that Aizen had the former ruler serving him. You're worried that Berrigan might try to make himself stronger and attack Aizen. The possibility is high. Berrigan is well aware that Lord Aizen is more than a match for him, Harable said. But he's always been one for opportunity, and an opportunity like this would be very promising to him. Ben crossed his arms. As if things weren't bad enough, now there was the chance that he'd have to confront the second Espada. Luppy and Anoitra would be warm-ups compared to him. Ben was certain of that. Be on guard but don't do anything foolish, Harable said, though everyone could tell that Stack was excluded from her warning. Berrigan would not dare use his released state within the confines of Las Notches, but he is the second Espada for a reason. Is it because his released state would alert Aizen? Ben asked. While that is true, there is a rule where the top 4 Espada are forbidden from using our released states within these walls because we would risk destroying Las Notches, Harable informed him. Ben stared at her with his mouth hanging open. Static, Berrigan, Harable, or Ulquiorra could destroy this entire place with their released states alone. Warm-ups nothing, Berrigan was in a whole other league compared to Luppy and Anoitra, and this was his sheer power alone. Ben wondered, should he find himself in a fight against Berrigan, if he would stand a chance? Ben, don't try fighting Berrigan, Stark told him, surprising everyone with the same seriousness he had used during Ben's first fight with Anoitra. It's too dangerous. Just get away from him as best you can. Stark, Lillinet stared at her other half's change in attitude. Maybe you could fight him, maybe you couldn't, Stark added. I'm not taking that chance. If I have to make sure he backs off, I will. Oh, okay, Ben said, still adjusting to this very out-of-place attitude from the lazy Espada he knew and had possibly befriended. Sung's son realized that it was time for a change in topic because she spoke up. You know, how about we go swimming, she suggested. Ours was cut short due to Shale's experiment, so perhaps we should make up for lost time. Sounds good, Lillinet said, grabbing Ben's arm. Come on, Ben, let's go get ready. Huh? Oh sure, Lillinet, sure. Lillinet started pulling him back to their palace to get ready. Go on ahead, ladies, Harable told her Fraxian. I'll be there shortly. Yes, Lady Harable, Apache said, speaking for the entire group as all 3 followed Lillinet and Ben. Once they were alone, Harable crossed her arms under her chest. I'm surprised at you, Static, Harable said to her fellow Espada. TCH, Stark slouched. I may not know Berrigan as well as you do, Harable, but I do know that he's dangerous. And not just because of his rank. Ben might be in over his head on this one. So you believe that Berrigan may try something as well? Harable asked. I don't know anything for certain, but I think it's best if we expect the worst, Stark said. Lord Aizen won't let anything happen though, Harable said in an assuring tone. I just don't want Ben to take unnecessary risks. Same here, Stark said tiredly. But Ben, he can't help lending a hand to someone in need. I know, Harable agreed. He's a good kid, Stark went on, staring off over the sand. Knows what we are, what we've done to live, and yet he still considers us his friends. Yes, Harable said thoughtfully. Is that why you're so protective of him now, Stark? Do you see him as an actual friend? Stark didn't say anything for a moment, and Harable started to suspect he would not. Maybe, he said suddenly. Do you? Maybe, Harable answered back. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 9. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Bigby the Big Bad Wolf on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.